happy to present to you the man for whom we have been all waiting, the distinguished chairman of the Central Board of Excise and Customs. Without further ado, let me invite him to speak to us. And about that wall I was telling you, he had written an article on When I Met the Wall. That article is published in the souvenir which is given along with the kit. It will make very interesting reading. I should have, in fact, asked you to read that before we started the program. That would have been nice, but anyway, you can go home and read it. It's a very, very informative, entertaining article. Writer, a wonderful speaker, above all an authority, and now the Chief of Indian Customs, distinguished globally. Your kind attention to Chairman, Central Board of Excise and Customs.
Distinguished dignitaries in the dais and the distinguished audience. First of all, I thank TaxIndiaOnline.com for inviting me to come here and be the chief guest in this August function. Every year, TaxIndiaOnline.com celebrates, I would say, the post-budget affairs with a meet with the trade and the government. Generally, they used to have it in either Hyderabad or Visakhapatnam. I remember to have participated in those interactions in Hyderabad and Visakhapatnam. So this time they have done it at the place where business is, the commercial capital of the country. So it's a good thing that they've done it in Mumbai. And I thank you again for inviting me to be the chief guest. This is a post-budget session, so obviously I'll discuss about certain budget provisions, the philosophy behind the budget this time. Before going into the topic, let me say a few preliminaries. You know, the budget has been placed by the Honorable Union Finance Minister on 28th of February. The budget process is like this. After a few days, the Parliament generally goes in recess, and that is the period when we get time to interact with the trade industry, other stakeholders, get their feedback, have the churning amongst ourselves to take care of whatever concerns have been expressed. Then the budget, after the recess, the Parliament opens, debates start, and finally the Finance Minister replies, and his final reply contains whatever the concerns which he had considered and which entail certain modifications. So this is how a budget, and finally the bill which is placed is passed. Thing today, because of certain situations, all of you are aware. Elections have been announced in 5 states, and the parliamentarians have to go and campaign in their respective constituencies. So the session has been curtailed. This budget session has been curtailed. There has been no recess. Continuously they are debating in the Parliament. And finally, on 22nd of this month, our Finance Minister will reply in Lok Sabha, and 24th he will reply in Rajya Sabha. So at that, by 25th, it is expected to come to an end, this session. So there has been a lot of pressure on us, and pressure on the trade in industry as well, and the bodies like Tax India Online and other chambers, to get as much feedback as possible, as quickly as possible, give it to us, and on that basis, we have also been, like, this budget preparation starts from the month of December, first week of December. For 3 months, December, January, February, it's a tough time for the people in CBEC, particularly those who are in tax research unit. Similarly with the income tax side, in TPL, they call it. And all of us generally look forward to 28th, that we will get some relief after 28th of February. But this was not to be this time, as I explained. So from 1st March itself, we have, in fact, from 20th February itself, in the evening itself, we started interacting with the people in the media, through the media, and getting the feedback as much as possible. So, so today, also it's not too late. Today is 18th. I'm going back tonight. We are working tomorrow and day after. Day after is a day of Holi, but it's no holiday for us. So whatever we receive today, that will also be taken into consideration. So that's why it's very important. Tax India works at a very fast pace. If I may request, I'm sure on the indirect tax side there will be a lot of queries and observations. I mean, my experience. Meanwhile, I've covered Mumbai once, Bangalore, and Delhi, of course, number of chambers. We found the maximum questions are on the indirect tax side, particularly on the service tax side. So may I request Tax India Online to compile all the observations, and if you can give it to me by Saturday, tomorrow. I know it's a tall order, but then the situation is like that. Because as I told you, we'll close everything by Sunday evening. Because Monday we have to brief FM and Tuesday we will reply. Now, every budget is prepared against a particular backdrop of the economic scene of the country. This budget has been no different. And that's why you see, before 2 to 3 days before budget, you have your economic survey presented by the chief economic advisor, and on the advice of chief economic by the finance minister. Now this shows what is the condition of the economy. So what has been the backdrop in Indian economy this time? Of course, the most glaring one was the high inflation. And then with it was the requirement of sustaining growth. As you all know, the whole world suffered recession in 2008. But India survived that. And even those bad years of 2008, 2009, 2010, our growth has not been that bad compared to in many other countries. To some extent, Central Board of Excise and Customs, and of course, the Ministry of Finance can take credit for this. The stimulus package that was given by way of reduction of excise duty and from 14% to 8% in 3 different states really worked. And I must at the same time compliment the trade and industry because they responded wonderfully. The trade and industry responded wonderfully, and that's why we had reasonably good growth even in 2008, 2009. It was over 6%, 7%, and now this year we have it 8.6%. And next year's target has been fixed at 9%. So there is the requirement of sustaining growth. There is the requirement of controlling inflation. And when we talk about growth, we want particularly growth in manufacture. Growth in manufacture leads to more job, more employment, more inclusive growth. And there has to be growth in agriculture, because we have seen our inflation has been mainly in the food supply position. It was question of supply demand. So, with this as the backdrop, there was the overarching requirement of fiscal consolidation. The deficit financing. The finance, this has to be, fiscal deficit has to be brought down So it has been pegged at 4.6 now next. So how to have fiscal consolidation? One straightway is that you increase your rates of taxes, duties, but then you will have inflation. The whole purpose will be lost. That's why Ms. Bhavna Joshi rightly said that this year, our finance minister, in so many words, he said that it was a real tightrope walking. So with this control in mind, the budget was prepared. Now, as you know, I will obviously restrict my address to the indirect tax sector. And indirect tax sector has got three components, as you all know: customs, excise duty on goods, and service tax on services. Now, I'll first take the customs part separately, and then excise and service tax I'll deal with together. Maybe because we have already started thinking of goods and services as a one bundle. And you will get sufficient indication of it when I go ahead with my address. Now, on the customs side, of course, both in customs, excise, on both fronts, as I mentioned, that we wanted our manufacturing to grow. Right now, this year, our share of manufacturing in GDP has been 16%, 1/6. And Finance Minister has pegged it at 25% in next 10 years. I know some of the economists have been skeptical about it. They say that it's very difficult to have such a huge growth from 16% to 25% in 10 years. But we are confident, our Finance Minister is confident, and we have seen the ability of our trade and industry, the resilience, and you have been seeing the different steps that the government is taking to facilitate a quick economic manufacturing growth. So, on the customs side, keeping that in mind, our main thrust has been to exempt goods which are in raw materials form or components and parts, so that the value addition, the manufacturing is done inside the country. I'll not go item by item, but there are a number of items. Of course, that theme has perhaps disturbed some sectors. It always happens. Nobody likes to pay tax. We talk about many reforms, but when it hits a particular sector, then that sector would like to say that leave us aside to tax others. As a taxman, we have faced it. Now, on the customs side, one item which has been quite discussed profusively in media and even in our interactions is the definition of CKD, completely knockdown condition. What was the idea? Idea was that when you import a complete kit and just assemble here, there's hardly any value addition here except in the assembly. So when you import a complete kit of automobile or a mobile, your parts, that engine, steering box, transmission, this should be in knockdown condition. But that was not to be. That was not happening. So we defined CKD, saying that when you are importing a complete kit I mean the complete vehicle, not a single item is indigenous. In such a situation, your engine box should be also in knockdown condition, steering box should be in knockdown condition. So that has been protested. We are looking into it, what can be done about it. The idea is that we wanted value addition. I can name, there's one company, which they're just importing engine box. They're just importing steering wheel. They're not importing the total kit. So their 10% duty is applicable because engine per se is 10%. But automobile, full automobile or full mobile, when imported in a CKD condition, in the complete kit, its rate of duty is 60%. But if we bring it in knockdown condition, completely knockdown condition, it is 10%. So that was the idea behind it, because we are not getting any manufacturing, revenue was not so much of a consideration. How much revenue one gets of that? How many high-end cars are there in the country? But these are basically for the high-end cars. But it was a consideration of the manufacture, to grow, to let the manufacturing grow. So anyway, we are seeing, considering we have received the representation. And another thing I must tell you, I will raise the concerns here. I will perhaps even deal with the options available, but I will not be able to tell you what we are going to do. The Parliament is in session, and our Finance Minister will reply to it on next Tuesday, 22nd. You will know the answer only on that day. So this is one example. Then, on customs, because there was inflation, particularly in the food sector I mentioned, so we exempted quite a few agricultural machineries, agricultural sector. We've given a lot of exemptions. On the textile sector, again, I will give you an example how the different sectors have contra interest. And we in the government, we have to take a holistic view. There has been a dearth of raw silk in the country. Total domestic demand for raw silk is 30,000 tons. And I'm not sure, it's with 30 lakh tons or 30,000 tons. That I'm very bad in numbers, but 30 that I remember. But anyway, that's immaterial. And the weavers, a domestic production is 20,000, whatever, lakhs or 1,000. So the weavers were crying, the yarn manufacturers were crying, they were facing the shortage, and so they said that please bring down the import duty on raw silk. So we did that. From 30% we brought it down to 5%. And now the volley of protests from the states where the silk is grown, they're saying the cocoon manufacturers, cocoon growers will be badly hit. So please bring up the rate of duty again. Now, we will take a call. We have examined. We feel, so long as there is a gap in the domestic demand of 10,000 tons, it is 1,000, not lakhs, 10,000 tons, then what is the question of not importing it? Anyway, but this is another thing I tell you. So, two conflicting interests, and we took a view. We will come to know on 22nd. Then customs said also another factor which we could not ignore is the international concern, and India is also very, very much part of it. Our Honorable Minister, Mr. Ramesh Jairam, is very active on it. We could not have ignored the environmental concerns. So, whichever is environment-friendly item, we have given a concession in the import duty. Mr. V.K. Gupta is here, Suzlon Power, we have taken into consideration, environment-friendly. Another example, LED. LED lamps are much better than the filament lamps. They are more environment-friendly. But there, we took two factors into consideration. One, that we allow import of LED, not LED lights, with exemption. We want manufacturing of LED lights in India. Why should LED lights be imported from China? Import LED from China. We don't have LED here. So we've exempted LED. So these are the considerations which were behind our back, which have been reflected in the budget. I can't go one after another. Each of the items, I'll just give you an example. So agriculture, we have given a priority sector, then others I told you. Another item is being talked about, the hike in export duty on iron ore and iron filings. Now there again, we had representations from the steel industry that the availability of iron ore is dwindling because of massive export of iron ore and filings. We took this into consideration. We consulted the concerned ministry, and accordingly, we hiked the duty of iron ore and filings. But at the same time, we said, if you palletize the iron, then it is duty-free. The idea is, again, you have value addition in the country. And then you export. Don't export your virgin raw materials just like that. And so that was the idea. then again, we are now flooded with representation that please bring down, otherwise the whole industry will die. Somebody pointed out, you are talking about pelletization plant, we don't even have power. But see, so that are the concerns of the concerned state. They have to do it to provide the power. Obviously, without power, how can there be industrialization? So these are so many concerns. International now, another concern, just during the tea, Mr. Laddie was talking about. Without nuclear power, you can't have. What are the available energy sectors? At the same time, you see what has happened in Japan. Just one consideration was not there, not to have those things in that rift belt area, and that havoc is being created. At the same time, if we just because of one incident we take a decision that we will not go in for nuclear power at all, it will be disaster. There is no other source of energy. So this is another way. So these are the things which are taken into consideration when the budget is made. And non-tariff matters, we made some reforms. You know, customs has been reforming itself from the early 80s by bringing in automation. We have EDI now, electronic data interchange. Version 1 was there. We have made it further robust by migrating to version 1.5. Nhava Sheva is the only one, and Chennai port, I think it is being done on 27th, 26th, but Nhava Sheva we have postponed for revenue consideration. I'm being very frank, otherwise it was to be done by 31st. Because in case there is any hitch, because in migration always there is some teething problem, not always, sometimes. Some ports we had it smooth, seamless flow. So we couldn't have taken the risk with Nhava Sheva, the biggest revenue earner. So we have postponed it to the 1st of April. Anyway, so by first week of April, whole country would have migrated to 1.5 version. Much robust. It can take many more schemes. Our risk management system is stabilized. Although these are not really budget related, but I will come to the budget related matter. Our risk management system is stabilized. Our online audit is going on quite well. We are working on the PCA, post-clearance audit, on site. And we have given the facility of ACP, Accredited Clientele Program, which actually is you are assessing your goods, but there was no legal backing. So that's why Finance Minister has announced in the budget that we are going in for self-assessment in customs as well. So this process of self-assessment will start, and it has been legalized by amendment of the sections, relevant sections in the Customs Act. The concept of proper officer, all these days it was the proper officer who could do the assessment. Now the importers themselves can do the assessment, self-assessment. So what will be the scenario? The scenario will be simple. The importer himself will prepare the bill of entry, put the description, put the tariff heading, put the rate of duty, calculate the duty, put the value, more importantly, calculate the duty, pay the duty, and then the first point perhaps he will come into contact with the customs officer is when he goes to the docks for clearance of the goods. And that too will be system driven. Which item is to be taken up for examination, what percentage, all will be system driven. So we are very sure that this will facilitate, it will cut down the transaction cost. And having done so, and we are now hopeful very soon we will put that PCA in place. Coming on the question of transaction cost, reduction of transaction cost, I must also mention here that although not budget related, strictly speaking, Union Commerce Minister of State, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia, had taken an initiative, unique initiative, in reduction of transaction cost in exports. I'm sure there are some exporters here as well. And he set up a task force, and the job of the task force was to suggest, recommend what are the steps to be taken to reduce. And there are some 22 points were given, and I'm happy to announce here that out of 22, 21 we have already implemented, and 22nd also we are going to implement. The last one which we implemented would really immensely help the exporters. You know, when an exporter was importing through different ports, he had to file a bond at each port. But now we have provided for the facility of single bond for export through any of these ports which are connected with EDI. And the circular has been issued on 25th of February. It will be implemented from 1st of April. And everything is in place. Systems also, the Directorate of Systems also informed me that everything is going on smoothly. It will quite facilitate. The other one was again a very ticklish issue. You export goods. In that goods, of course, the goods do not have any export duty. But in that goods, some services also would have been contributed and on which you would have paid service tax. Now, that goods on which the service tax is imbibed, when it is exported out, you are supposed to get the refund of that service tax element. But I was told that it was quite a bad experience to get this refund. I must admit that we perhaps failed, but then we are taking corrective action now. What has been done now? We are going to have something like, those of you who are conversant with it, we call it All India Industry Rate for drawback. Some goods, so no need to calculate in each and every case what should be your drawback. You just say, and the committee every year reviews it, and you give your feedback, and on that basis they fix the rates. So the same committee we have approached, they have agreed. The committee headed by a noted economist, Mr. Soumitra Chaudhary, who is the member of the Planning Commission, and our own Mr. T.R. Dostogi, TRU expert of many years, I think 17 budgets he did, and Mr. Mahapatra, who was in the Commerce Ministry for a long time. So we have placed this, and I am told within 3 months they will come out with that all India rate for refund of service tax, which are imbibed in the goods which are exported. So that will take care of a lot of issues. Later on, we'll take up the other issue of the service tax refund. Generally, service tax export, there's no service tax, but there are certain issues are there. Anyway, now I come back to customs side. I've told you what mostly budget process, a few non-budget issues also I raised. Now I come to the goods and services. As you know, the announcement which has been made and is being implemented by the Union Finance Minister with regard to the GST, goods and service tax. The first step needed for implementation of goods and service tax is the constitutional amendment. We have the state list, we have the union list, we have the concurrent list. But where do you put the GST, goods and service tax? Center has the power to levy and collect tax on manufacture of goods. Center has the power to levy and collect tax on services. Center doesn't have power to levy and tax VAT on sale of goods. States do not have power to collect levy on manufacture of goods, levy on services. So, goods and service tax is a unique product. So for that, constitutional amendment is needed. But if we leave the constitutional amendment only at that point, by defining that center and states both will have the authority to levy and collect goods and service tax on all items except, because there are certain exceptions like petroleum, natural gas, crude, diesel, alcohol, these are outside. We wanted all of them to be there, but states will take some time to adjust to it. So they've said that these items should not be there. But if we had stopped there, it would have created a problem later. When I addressed on GST on various forums at different parts, I've covered at least 16 places all over the country. And most of the places, a question has been asked. After you have a GST or a particular structure, particular rate of duty, what if suddenly one state says, no, it's not working at all, I am losing my revenue. So I am taking out this item from GST, or I am raising the rate of GST. What if that happens? Mind you, GST is not like VAT. VAT, each state, one by one. So that's why VAT could be implemented in the country step by step, one after another. The last state, I think it took about 4 years since the first state experienced VAT, and the last state was, I think, UP. So, but that's not the case with GST. as Madam Bhavna Doshi had mentioned, GST talks about in the common economic market. The goods you can't unilaterally have only for center, or you can't have one or two states. Goods don't remain only within one state. There is interstate movement of goods. So it has to be together, it has to be by consensus. So we thought to have a GST council, constitution of which would be, that's a proposal that Union Finance Minister would be the chairman, and all the 30 plus states will be represented by their respective finance ministers, and of course our Union Minister of State for Finance also will be a member. And all decisions will be taken by consensus. The third point, main point of the constitutional bill is, okay, you have said this will be the GST, how the GST will be levied. You have said that this will be the GST Council and this is the functions of the GST Council. Then what if, even after all those things, certain states, or even center, why I should absolve myself from that. Even center suddenly decides and violates those. Then what is the dispute settlement scheme? So that's why we thought of having a dispute settlement authority. And this dispute is not the dispute between the taxpayer and taxman. It's a dispute amongst 30 plus states, dispute between the center and the states. So we thought of a rather judicial body headed by some retired Supreme Court judge or retired judge, High Court judge, High Court Chief Justice, and having technical members from both center as well as states to have an authority like that. Well, most of the states agreed to this draft. We had drafted 3 times. Last time the third draft was given. Most of the states agreed, but certain states showed their apprehension on the point that their fiscal autonomy will be interfered with. So, we are very confident that the constitutional amendment in this form is very essential so that there is no dispute in the future. At the beginning, but then discussions have been going on for 4 years. So this time our finance minister took the bold step. He announced it before the budget session started in the mid. And the rationale behind it was that the bill which is being placed in Parliament is not going to be acted straight away. After all, we need the consensus. And just now the government in power doesn't have the number. It is not just simple majority. He is aware, finance minister is aware, and he's referred it. That the process, let me tell you in brief, what is the process of a constitutional amendment? The bill will be referred after it is placed in the Parliament, it will be referred to the Standing Committee of the Parliament. The Standing Committee, which comprise the parliamentarians of all political parties, most of it, they will then contact all the stakeholders. And including the states, including center, including trade and industry, get their feedback. And on the basis of the feedback from that, you will get in some format what you will get. And then, obviously, it will be a format which is with consensus. Then it will be placed in the Parliament for passing in the Act. So, that Act is going to happen. You would have seen from the media, Cabinet has given its nod to the draft proposal, amendment bill. Anytime before 25th it will be placed. So this will be the first step, and so we are also ready. It's not that we are all sitting quietly till the amendment bill comes. We are doing our back-end work. Our officers who are busy, TIOL officers and other officers. We have a task force who are working on the GST. We are working on the model legislation. Because after the amendment bill is passed, we will place our central GST Act in the Parliament. Similarly, the states will place their state GST Act in their respective legislatures. So, the work is going on. It's something like CPM, critical path management. And once it is done, so we'll do it. So, I don't think that if everything is going as per the schedule, I don't think it should be more than 1 year to bring in, more than 1 year, 1.5 years to bring in GST. Because another important important fact, unlike income tax, which is assessment year-wise, GST, goods and service tax, central excise tax, VAT, these are all transaction-based tax. So one doesn't have to wait for the whole annual year. So it can come at any time of the financial year. So anyway, that is where GST stands. Now, our finance minister was not content just by announcing that he will place the GST bill. He also indications. His message was loud and clear. Now I'll deal with them. I mentioned that manufacturing is doing quite well in the country, particularly the automobile sector, and there are other sectors. Even cement is doing well. Steel has been doing well. Little slump was there, but still doing well compared to other years. With this sector doing well, there was an option before the finance minister to partially roll back the stimulus further. That means from 10%, he could have taken it to 12%. That would have taken care of our concern of fiscal consolidation in a big way. Across the board, you increase by 2%. And in fact, I was reading the pink papers for about 5-6 days before the budget. Almost all the pink papers were giving the indication the rates will go up. The stimulus will be partially withdrawn. In fact, I find in the markets the reports that certain items' prices have gone up before the budget. But he has not done so. He has not done so. The prime reason for it, he had GST in mind. He has GST in mind. Because in the service tax is 10%. And we always maintain that the rate of goods and services should be same, because we must look at the GST, goods and service, as one bundle. So that's why, since service tax is 10%, he has maintained central excise duty on 10%, no rollback. This was the first reason. But there are two other reasons why he didn't go in for rollback. Second reason is that it would have obviously had adverse impact on the inflation. 2% is quite a hike across the board. So he avoided that. And the third reason I consider it to be another very important reason. This is the question comes that we are public. Always we talk about PPP, partnership. While giving this benefit in the sense that I am saying, you see, he has not done it. As it is said that a budget is as important for the things done as for the things not done. When you ask for so many things, different sectors, but we don't do it certain things, we do certain things. When we don't do certain things, doesn't mean we have not considered it, we have not examined it. A lot of thought processes have gone and then come to the conclusion that we will not do it. So similarly, this was also one of the reasons why he said he will not do it. Is this, having given this benefit by not doing it, the extra business profit that will accrue for not increasing the tax, he expects that extra business profit to be translated into further investment. Once it is translated into further investment, automatically it will give rise to more manufacturing, more employment, and in turn more tax. We'll get more duty. So these are the three basic reasons why he didn't go in for this rollback, another rollback of the stimulus. Now, on the good side, the second signal for GST was, in GST regime, you can't have exemption of all the items. I mean, such a huge exemption. Right now, central excise side, we have 356 plus exemptions. VAT, it is 99 items. Now, to have exemption on 356 and suddenly coming into GST where there will be very little. And as I mentioned in other fora, what we are aiming at is not an ideal GST. An ideal GST talks about a GST without any exemption, a GST without any threshold, a GST administered by one agency. But in our typical conditions, Indian conditions, it is not possible. So we are aiming for a good GST, aspiring to have an ideal GST in course of time. So to acclimatize the people, to get them used to the GST regime, out of those 356 items, we have culled out 130 items from the exemption list and brought it under this tax net. But again, there are generally two rates. 10% is the standard peak rate and the 4% is the merit rate. So we thought that instead of merit rate, we'll give them 1% rate only. We created another thing for these 130 items. And by that, we chose the items, basically, which are non-primary food items and non-primary fuel items. And certain others. This was the consideration. And third alignment was made. Most of the states, while they started their VAT rate at 2%, 3%, 4%, now they have gone into 5%. So to align with that merit rate of 5%, we have also increased it from 4% to 5%. Of course, you will say, and you have a right to say, that we have done it for revenue consideration as well. Yes, of course, we have done it for revenue consideration. At the end of the day, we are revenue officials. We have to collect our revenue. It is our core competence. But we have taken care so that the people who can pay, who are able to pay, only they are taxed. And this is particularly true when I come to the service sector. On central exercise, other thrust areas have been obviously the cold storage and cold chain sector, infrastructure for that. We all know what happened last year. In spite of huge agricultural production of food grains, so much of food grains could not be stored. The cold chain was not there in place and the storage. So we have encouraged infrastructure on cold storage and cold infrastructure, storage infrastructure. Then we have also given, again, some environmental considerations there in certain items we have exempted. So, and on the administration side, we have advanced our ACES, Automated Central Excise and Service Taxes, to a great extent. A fresh version has been launched last month, in the month of February, so that saving many more things can come. And it's important because let me again go back to GST. You see, when GST comes, our tax base will increase manifold. Right now, our tax base for goods and service, excise and service tax, is about 14 lakhs. And a very rough estimate we made, and it should be around 55 to 60 lakhs. Now, it's well nigh impossible to handle such huge tax base unless we have a robust IT infrastructure. So keeping that in mind, in the last budget, not this budget, in the last budget, the Finance Minister had announced and he implemented it, formation of TAGUP, Technology Assistance Group for Unique Projects, TAGUP. And GST project was the most important project under this TAGUP. In that TAGUP, the chairman was chosen to be none other than Dr. Nandan Nilekani. And there were members, our own Mr. P.R.V. Ramanan, then from Income Tax, Mr. S.S. Khan, they are all well-known personalities in their respective domain, and there are two more. So they have submitted their report about 3 weeks before the budget, and this effort, Dr. Nilekani has been personally advising us in our expert group on IT development for the GST. And we have progressed quite a bit. Let me tell you 2 minutes more on this. How we progressed. We have envisaged there will be a special purpose vehicle. We call it GST Net. That special purpose vehicle, the ownership will be with 3. Without ownership, nothing can progress. Every work we do, every project we do, we must own. If we don't own, then it's nobody's baby, it doesn't develop. So GST net, there will be 3 owners. Center, 30 plus states, and a technology partner who will take care of the technology part of it. And we have identified that technology partner to be NSDL, National Securities Depository Limited. They're already used to dealing with taxation. They've done some good work with the income tax. They've done some work with our easiest model for payment. They have already started the work in a big way, and in the month of June, there will be a pilot project in 11 states. What happens is that in 30 plus states, different states are at different stage of development. So when the GST comes, all will have to be brought into one stage, same stage of development. So that work they are doing. Similarly, center. So we don't want that the amount of money that we have spent in our existing IT infrastructure, both in the center and the state, this should not go waste. So what are the 3 basic business processes with which they will start? The first important business process is, as a taxman, I must know who are my taxpayers. So that's why registration is needed. Secondly, my taxpayers must pay their tax. So the payment is the next business process. And thirdly, since it is self-assessment, self-payment, as a taxman, I must know whether he is paying the tax correctly or not. So he has to file a return. That return is the document is electronic document, on which I'll know whether my tax has been collected correctly or not. So these 3 business processes, the pilot project will start. Other things like audit, refund, many others, clearance, provisional clearance, all those things. This we envisage that our existing infrastructure will be tweaked, if I may use the word, so that it can interact with the GST net. And that's why it was important that we also advanced our ACES. And that announcement was also there. We have advanced our ACES application. And when the GST comes, it will be further developed to get it interlinked with the GST net. So the progress is quite good. That's why I mentioned that the back-end work is going on. Once the hurdle of this GST has been done, then everything will be done. Now, coming back to the service tax. Service tax also, we have followed the same theme. When the goods and service tax comes, there will be, it has to be broad-based. You can't have the situation where it is now. What is the situation? I told you, manufacturing constitutes 16% of our GDP. You know, the service sector constitutes 55 to 60%. It is almost 60% of our GDP. 60. And while manufacture constitutes most of our indirect taxes, service sector constitutes only about 9% of our total indirect taxes. So, what does it mean? A sector which constitutes 60% of the country's GDP contributes only about 9% of the country's indirect tax collection, which means we are not tapping those sectors. We are not taxing. Now, that can't be the situation in the GST regime. Now, please don't take me amiss. Everybody says GST, oh, it's a fantastic thing. We must have GST. Every sector of the industry trade. But when we put some taxes on the, keeping in mind to put them alert that these are the taxes will come now in course of time. Oh, don't touch us. No, this is Aam Janta. No, you are affecting too much. Please withdraw our sector. But then, I mean, how can you conceive of GST? Because after all, you will be getting credit. And now that is there, what we are giving abatement. In each sector that we have introduced, we have given abatement. Anyway, so that was the thing why we thought that we will broad base. And how to broad base? We included only 2 new sectors. One is the hotels and the other is the restaurants. And then we broad-based, well, let me catch the bull by its horn, if I may say. Healthcare service, which has been much talked about. Insurance service, lawyers service, then there are some more. I mean, I'll come in course of time. So there will problem. But the basic objective while making it broad-based was that we must tax the person who is capable of paying it. And that's why in hotels we have said 1,000 rupees and above. And we have given 50% abatement. So your rate is not 10%, it is 5%. In restaurants, we have said air-conditioned restaurant where license for serving liquor is there. I'm sure Amjanta don't go there. So there also we have given 70% abatement. The rate of duty is 3%. In the expansion sector, your health services, it's not that for the first time we are bringing in. Last year it was there. But it was there for payment through the medical insurance people. What was happening? Medical insurance people, when they pay to the hospitals, they're supposed to pay the service tax and then they take credit for it. So the effect is not much. But they won't pay. Our experience, what I'm saying is not story, fiction. What they do, they ask the taxpayer, I mean not the taxpayer, the patients, that you go to the hospital, you pay yourself, then he doesn't have to pay the service tax. And whatever bill is there, give it to us, we'll pay. So that we find at the end of the year that there's hardly any payment on the service tax on health sector. So we thought that we'll do it. And there, again, keeping that it should not hit the Amjanta, we said that centrally air-conditioned hospital and 25 beds and above. Now, what hurts us is that when the words are wrongly interpreted, we said centrally air-conditioned and hue and cry. How can you have an operation theatre without air conditioning? How can you have an ICU without air conditioning? Obviously, I am not saying. Now, you are looking from the perspective of a big city man. Look at our small towns. I come from a small town. I know that hardly any centrally air-conditioned hospital, but all hospitals have got air-conditioned operation theatre and ICUs, and they are not covered under it. By one stroke of centrally air-conditioned, all your small towns, village hospitals are out. But even media, it was written. Air-conditioned, how with without air conditioning? And what pained us most is that two eminent doctors called Finance Minister cruel. He said that it's cruelty in his face when he was trying to interact with the FICCI and the CII and the PhD chairperson. This is not the way. Another eminent doctor says that it's a misery tax. Now, look at it. How much actually it is affecting? Calculate it. You will find, and so much of credit you are getting. Hospitals will be getting the credit, will be paying. They have got parking facilities covered under service tax. They've got so many catering facilities will be covered under service tax. They'll be getting credit. There's nothing much, but it was made such a way. Anyway, as I said, that we do our job as a public finance man, but sometimes public finance perception is different from public perception. So our finance minister will take a call and reply on 22nd. So we'll come to know the outcome of that. But that is a concern. The issue has been made very emotive. If that has made me emotive, counter-emotive as well, so please pardon me. Because I don't like misinterpretation or misrepresentation of facts. Now, second comes insurance. Insurance sector, what was happening? We were covering only the risk factor. But insurance these days, as you know, a big chunk of their activities is in the management service by management of investment. So that was not covered. So we had the figures before us. Our Joint Secretary, Mr. V.K. Gaur, did a good work and tells. We saw from 2002-2003, Rupam, 2002-2003, it was coming down and hardly any payment from PLA, from cash. Entire thing is credit, is minus. So that means actually we are not getting anything out of insurance sector. So we covered the management services as well. Similarly, we have covered the commercial coaching classes. We are not going to the educational sector per se, But commercial coaching classes, we gave an exemption that if any course is not covered by, is recognized by any what do you call it, recognized body by university or deemed university, then it will not be covered. But then what happened? The coaching centers were having 30 coaching courses, only one was like that, the entire thing was exempted. So this loophole we covered. We said that no, you will get only one, so you get exemption for only one. The rest you have to pay. Similarly, lawyers. Lawyers, we have not touched individual lawyers giving service to an individual. We have covered only the previous clause was there to solicitor. We have just brought it. Moreover, I thought that we thought that chartered accountants and lawyers should be put on the same footing. Why not? So chartered accountants are under their service tax, so why not the lawyers? So that is also expansion. Then we have done some other certain things. Maybe Rupam Kapoor, when the question answer comes, then we can begin covered. So that was the basic theme of our taxation on the service sector and the GST portion. And the main concerns which have been expressed by Madam Bhavna Das Doshi before she went, these are the concerns that have been told to us before also, and we are looking into it. We are not insensitive to the concerns. We are looking into it. But as I told you, I can't tell you our solution just now. You will know it on 22nd. There are concerns on the service like that Senvet credit rules. There are the Senvet credit rules about the negative list. Then certain wordings on this, we are aware of this. I've noted down earlier things are there. And point of taxation, yes, there is an issue there that to be paid is creating an issue. We are taking care of that. And Senvet point of taxation rules, Senvet credit rules, and many others amendments are coming. Maybe while we interact, I think I've spoken quite for some time. So I conclude here. Thank you very much for your attention.